Hello everybody and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is the business performance analytics. My name is Severin and I will be your moderator today. We're broadcasting this session through Microsoft Teams Town Hall. Presenting for us today from Microsoft we have Jeannie Wang, Principal Product Manager, and Rishabh Agwal, Senior Software Engineering Manager. Jeannie, up to you.
Thank you, Severin. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be here today. Let me just go ahead and get started and talk about our agenda for the day. We'll do a quick introduction on BPA and what it is. We'll walk through the process architecture of how we've architected the data model. I'll pass some time over and move over to data architecture and extensibility. And then we'll show you a quick demo and open up time for Q&A. As always, during the session, if you have questions, you don't have to wait till the end. Like Severin mentioned, please go ahead and put those questions into the Q&A and we'll be answering questions as we go. Let's go ahead and jump into the introduction. Our business case for business performance analytics started a couple of years ago when we kept hearing the same issues coming from our customers. Data becoming a bigger production for a lot of our customers. We found that customers were saying they have data spread out across disparate systems. And in order to get good analytics and good reporting, they needed to combine all that data into one system or one source. It's hard to get at that data. It's hard to correlate that data, join the data together and create reports. And any kind of analytics and reporting usually requires some level of developer or consulting type support that costs money. And finally, even you want to look for insights in data, you need to have accurate, reliable data. And in order to find those and be able to get to that place, it's time consuming. We took this feedback from all our customers and really began to think about how we can solve some of these problems. We started the effort with some guiding principles. The first one is we wanted the solution to be delightful to the user. We wanted to prioritize the user, which means we were looking at the business analyst or the finance person or the controller, and we wanted to make sure they could write the reports. We want to make sure it was easy deployment. We wanted to give this solution to our customers in tools that they're most familiar with, which is Excel and Power BI. And we also wanted to enable collaboration. The second principle we're abiding by is we want to make sure that we're data-driven and trustworthy. We want to make sure that data is as current as possible, right? Refreshed as current as possible. Security is top of mind. We wanted to ensure that this data that we're providing our customers that is going to be able to centralize data is secured by role-based access control. And finally, we want to empower users to make data-driven decisions, right? And finally, this solution needs to be extensible, right? We're not just solving for Dynamics 365 finance and operations, but we wanted to be able to add and remove or extend data models to allow additional data from external sources in as well. We want to enable ISV or partner solutions that you may have installed in your environments to be included in this data model as well. And we wanted to make sure that the solution that we rolled out was upgradable. So in order to do that, I'm going to go on and start talking about the process architecture. We took a value chain model. We took a dimensional modeling approach. And so what we started with our Dynamics 365 data, and we consider data from other systems as well. We took the data in Dynamics 365 and we began to look at it from a value chain perspective. A value chain essentially is a grouping of business processes. Now, the reason why we look at it at the business process level is because a business process is what you would do to enter transactions into your ERP. So when you create a journal entry or when you create an invoice or when you pay a payment, right? Each of those business processes creates transactions. It is off of those transactions that you want to be able to do your reporting eventually. So what we did was we took all these business processes and we grouped them into value chains. Now, the value chains may look familiar in the sense that record to report, where it includes your budget transactions, your general ledger transactions. Procure to pay will be things like your AP transactions, all the way from purchase order to purchase payment. Order to cash transactions will be all your AR transactions, but including sales order all the way down to sales payments. Acquired to retire will be like your fixed assets and leasing. Plan to close will eventually have project in there as well. And then hire to retire will be HR. Now, the eventual goal will be to include the entire data model that we have in our ERP. The first initial effort has been towards releasing the finance data model, which is these first 4 value chains. Now, on top of these value chains that we've built, we then built dimensional role-based access control. Because now, as you can imagine, you have all your data laid out and grouped into these value chains. So we wanted to make sure we give you another source, another way to be able to establish role-based security. And on top of that, finally, is where we will allow and enable you to build your purpose-built analytics, your insights, and eventually also Copilot capabilities will be built on top of these models as well. I want to talk a little bit more about the data value chains. As I mentioned earlier, the finance data value chain is broken up into these 4: the record to board, procure to pay, order to cash, and acquire to retire. Business Performance Analytics is currently in public preview. In public preview today, if you were to join, you'd be able to enable and experiment with record to report and procure to pay. We are slowly beginning to roll out order to cash, and closely after we'll roll out acquire to retire. Now you'll be able to see each of the transactions in this data value chain. And so as you can see, budget, record to report, you have budget and forecast, budget reservation, general ledger, procure to pay, purchase requisition, all the way down to purchase payment. And then order to cash is sales or service orders all the way down to payments. And then acquired to retire is acquisitions all the way down to retirements and disposals. Now, the powerful thing about these value chain data models is that you can not only report on each individual business process, and one business process is one box, but you can also report on the entire value chain. That means top to bottom. I can look at a purchase requisition number on an invoice. So I could look at a purchase order number on a payment, right? Or I could look at it across, which means I could maybe look at a purchase order number on a general ledger transaction, on a purchase invoice number on a general ledger transaction. So I have the way to now be able to look at my data dimensionally. And to give you another view of this, I'll show you how we actually modeled for it. When we began the process, here I have order to cash. When we began the process, we began to list out, say, okay, under the order to cash value chain, what are the business processes that exist? What do we do, right? So we began to list out all the business processes that would fall out under order to cash. Then we went back and we said, at what grain do we want to model this? Do we want to have it at the header level or the line level? And the decision was we would always model at the most atomic grain, which means that if I'm looking at a sales order, which is the first line, I want to be able to model for every row on a sales order line. And if I wanted a sales invoice, I would want to have every row on a sales invoice line. What does this mean? This means that when I'm looking at my data model for sales invoice, I'll be able to see my invoice number. I'll be able to see my lines on my invoice. I'll be able to see my unit of measure, my price, right? My product. And so I'll be able to see the line level. All of this is available in one table. Once we were done with identifying the business processes, then we began to look at what are the dimensions by which I want to filter or slice and dice this data. And what are the common dimensions that will link my data together? So for here, you see we have accounting date, and we have things like general ledger account or ledger dimension, which tells me my legal entity, or project or product. And I know that's always a question we get from our customers is, can I report by project on, say, invoices? And so we've included project dimension in here as well. Now, before I go to this, I'm going to go back. Sorry, I clicked too fast. Now, once we were done with this is what we began to use to create our model. So just a quick recap, we modeled at the business process level, which is your transaction level. We modeled at the lowest atomic grain, right, which is at the line level. And we've considered multiple dimensions by which you can slice and dice your data. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please do go ahead and put it into the Q&A, and I'd be happy to come back and answer them. Now, what does BPA cost us? This is always a question. Now, BPA is part of your finance license. So there is no additional cost to install. And like I mentioned earlier, BPA is currently in public preview. We'll go ahead and make the links available, post this call to how to participate in public preview and also how to join our customer advisory board. Now, part of the finance license, what you do get is you get 3 years of history plus current year data. So that's about 4 years of history, 4 years of data, sorry. You get 2 times a day refreshes at GA. When we GA, that'll be 2 times a day. In public preview, it's once a day. You will have extensibility. So let me explain this one a little bit, and we'll talk about extensibility a little bit more after this. Currently, BPA is a managed solution, which means that Microsoft manages it. And so the reporting experience is in embedded Power BI. And if you have used embedded Power BI, there are limitations around what you can and cannot do in Power BI. So in order to circumvent those, or to enable you to do more, we've given you the ability to extend your BPA environment into a Fabric environment. So I'll let Severin explain that a little further. And then finally, you also will have the ability to view and edit the data model in Excel. So this is currently the cost and what is included as part of your finance license. I see one quick question. I'll go ahead and answer it here as well. Do we need to separately install BPA? Yes, you do. It's an app. So you would have to install it separately. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and push this over to Rishab.
Thanks, Jenny. So now, as we have gone over the process architecture and we do understand what BPA offers, let's deep dive into the data architecture. So over to next slide. Yeah. So the overall data architecture for BPA contains 2 components, which is the ETL pipeline and then the model-driven app, which is used to surface the reports and the insights what we have seen in the process demo earlier, right? So basically for the ETL pipeline, it's all about integration with the Dynamics 365 finance systems. The ETL process here, it involves extracting data from the Dynamics 365, transforming it to meet our specific requirements, loading it to the target system. So our pipeline features automated data processing, ensuring efficient data handling and improving data quality. It is designed to scale as the data grows, offering high performance and reliability. So now we'll deep dive into each of these phases, right? So starting with extract, what happens is that each of the entities which are required for generation of the dimensional model for all of the value chains, what we have seen in the earlier slides, is basically backed by the underlying tables and the virtual entities in the database, in the FNO database. These tables are basically mapped with the virtual entities which are created at the time of app installation. So as soon as we install the BPA app on an environment, it creates the virtual entities for whatever input entities that are required to generate the dimensional model for a specific value chain, be it record to report or order to cash. And all of these virtual entities are mapped with one-to-one on the data entities. So once the virtual entities are created, app is installed, the extract phase starts, which basically syncs the data from the underlying FNO systems to the data lake, which is again a managed data lake tied to your Dataverse environment. So once this data is synced back into the lake in the required format, what we need, basically this is just the raw data, right, that is already present in the data lake. The next phase of the pipeline kicks in, which is transformation. This phase of the pipeline reads and consumes the data that is already being synced from the finance systems to the data lake and transforms this data using Spark transformations capability and generate the dimensional model out of this data, which again consists of facts and dimensions corresponding to the value chains what we have spoken about. So these Spark jobs basically run on the Synapse clusters and they read the data, consume the data from the lake, and then write the final dimensional model data back into the lake. As soon as the final dimensional model data is written back into the lake, we have transform phase completed for the complete pipeline. And next phase is kicked in, which is the load phase. So now during the install time itself, there are analytical tables of virtual entities created in the Dataverse, which would map to these output tables, what transformation phase has produced. And what happens in the load phase is that with the secure protocol using TDS, we try to bring basically the data, what has been produced by the transformation data model, back into the Dataverse BPI workspace. This is an embedded Power BI capacity as a part of a managed solution, what BPA offers. And all of this data would be loaded back into the PBI workspace. Once data sits into the PBI embedded capacity for the PBI workspace, there is the second component which we spoke about is the model-driven app, which is the Power App, which powers the reporting and for the BPA. So BPA app consumes the data from this data which is sitting in the PBI workspace and use it for rendering Excel and Power BI reports. So this completes the overall pipeline and the architecture of how data flows from the existing source systems back into your reports, what you see on the BPA app. So with this, I'll hand it over to Severin.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So let's take a look to the extensibility scenarios we are offering. The extensibility possibilities will be delivered within scenarios. So the first scenario for us is integrate BPA into your own or your customer's data warehouse. So it's BPA in your own Fabric environment. Let's take a look how this is working. So the scenario one is getting split into two iterations. So the first iteration is what is available right now in public preview. So that means on the left-hand side, you see it's a managed Power Platform. So it's a managed service we're offering within BPA. I saw there's a question if data lake is required or not. So with BPA, we are taking care about all the backend architecture which Rishabh just explained, right? So within the managed platform, you're getting, the one storage, you're getting input folder, output folders, and then we're having the BPA data model available. We have BPA data sets, and then we have our out-of-the-box reports and the Excels you can go build. And within the dashboards, you can make your adjustments and you can make it more beautiful. You can add more columns, but that's what we're having out of the box. And if you like to extend what we're offering you is you can go and link your BPA instance towards your Fabric environment. So with that, we're using Fabric shortcuts to make our entities available within your Fabric environment, that you can go and build your custom data sets on top of our data we are making available as direct link. So it's not a replication of data from BPA into your Fabric. It's a direct link. It's a shortcut where you can access directly the data which is stored within BPA in your Fabric instance. And based on that, you can go build your own data sets, and then you can have your own reports and your own Excel files. And on top, right, you can bring your own data to this, but I will talk about that on a different scenario. Let's take a look to the second iteration we're having for the scenario one. So this is just a screenshot way how you see the integration is getting built. So that means you are just entering your Fabric IDs, and then the configuration is getting started, and the configuration is done. Once the Fabric environment is linked to your BPA, you will see that the entities, the tables are visible in your Fabric service, so that you can start play with your custom data sets on top. Right? This is no data copy as mentioned. It's a direct link. It's a shortcut we're doing into the BPA data sets. But this scenario is having only the tables, right? So you need to bring and build your data sets. So with the second iteration, we're taking one step further. The next step for us is not only to make the entities available, the tables. With the second iteration we're working on right now, we are making the data sets, the BP data sets available as well to you. So that you having the managed service on the left-hand side, we have the BPA, and then the BPA is getting visible in your Fabric instance, and you will see that the BPA data sets will directly available for you to be queried by your custom data sets. So that means with this iteration, once that's complete, you will get the semantic models and you get the Power BI data sets directly into your Fabric, and then you can go play with that. So we're not only making data available, we are adding the data sets as well, the logic, the star schema. Right? So this is very powerful for your extension. So this is the screenshot of what's happening when we have BPA into your Fabric environment. So here you see we have the semantic model available, the BPA datasets, just as an example. And once the datasets, the BPA datasets are visible in your Fabric environment, you can go and create own reports. And on the right-hand side, you will see the datasets, the semantic model is available for you to be utilized, right? So then you go and play on top of our data sets and you design your custom reports you're having within your Fabric instance. The second iteration we're having is, F&O extensions or complex Dynamics ISV integrations. They need to flow through BPA. So end users go use BPA with having F&O customizations and ISVs in place. Let's take a look how we are solving that scenario too. So what we are making available is, and it's important to understand that this is going to be a Microsoft managed, Power Platform experience. So that you can go and add your custom fields from ISV solutions or your own custom fields you're having to the F&O data entities via the Dataverse virtual entities. So on the action one, you get the possibility to extend the virtual entities we're using that influences the import folder we are using. All right, with the second action, you can go and add the ISV fields and tables, and you can transform the output schema to reflect your new fields you added into the input folder on the step one. So with that, the output folder is influenced, and you can start and see your custom fields, your ISV fields in the analytical tables. That's step 3. So once the custom fields are available, you can go and add your fields in the tables, and you can design the relationships that we are building our custom data sets. That's action number 4. And once the data sets are built and we have our custom fields added, you can use these fields in the Power BI or in the Excel report. And then this, is being part of a Microsoft managed experience, right? So within the Power Platform. So the third scenario we are thinking about is integrating data from third-party systems like an SAP or other first-party ERP software vendors. Let's take a look to that. So we're not only stopping by having BPA work on top of Dynamics Finance, we are thinking about really making BPA to be enabled for other third-party ERP systems. And the scenario is straightforward. That means we are adding just a data source. So within the managed experience, we are using the scheduled data flows within Dataverse to make data available, and we're adding fields to tables to the virtual entities. So that within the input folder, we're not receiving the IXDB data, which is our Dynamics 365 Finance data, or supply chain or commerce. We are receiving the third-party data as well. And once we have the data in Dataverse, right, we are using the same technique as we are used for the scenario 2. We are using the extension possibilities to change the output schema that we are making these data available within the BPA data output folder. So this should work for initial and incremental things. Once that's there, we are following the process. We take a look to the action number 3, where we can add our third-party fields and tables to the analytical tables. Once this is done, we take a look to the data sets. We go add these tables and fields. We can define relationships to make our data sets work with third-party data. We import it into Dataverse. Once this work is done, we take a look to the action number 5, where we can go and design our custom reports in Power BI or Excel to have a report which is a mashup between finance and operations data plus third-party data. So it all starts that we're getting data into Dataverse, and here we can go play that we are matching up BPA data sets with your custom data you're having. And that summarizes the extensibility story we're having for the BPA. And with that, Rishabh, back to you.
Thanks, Evelyn. So now we have covered basically the high-level overview of the product, including the architecture. It's time to understand what it takes to install BPA on your environment. So BPA requires a finance and operations environment linked with the Dataverse. That's the first prerequisites where it needs a data bus which is backed by the finance and operations. Currently, we support BPA on sandboxes and prod instances. We do not have a support on the UNO environments at this point of time. So the minimum recommended version for Dynamics Finance, what we have for BPA is listed in the product documentation and in the slide over here. That's what we need as the least version for BPA to work. And these are the steps, right? What we are seeing on the high level. For example, the first step is all around once the finance environment is created, it requires the integration with the Power Platform in case if Dataverse is not linked to the existing finance environment, which can be done through the Lifecycle Service LCS portals. So we have the documentation available on our public talks, for which we would share the link shortly. And the second step is around configuring the tenant, enabling the Power Apps user just to ensure that all of these users are pretty enabled. So all of these steps are required for validation, mainly without requiring any specific actions at preview. With GA, we are going to remove some of these steps as well from our documentation. The step 4 is when we need to ensure that the required configurations, what we need for BPA to work, are enabled. For example, BPA requires licensing config, which is SQL row version change tracking, to be enabled for the entity sync to work. And then it has certain dependencies on few of the tables which are backed by some of the config keys. All of those details are present again on our public documentations. Once the required configs are enabled, which are by default enabled in a default sandbox being created or a prod environment, unless or until there are any explicit customizations done, the step 5 is to ensure that the Power Platform Admin Center is ready, the underlying solutions are updated, and the step 6 is to request the install link. So as we are in preview, we basically, once all of these steps are done, the customers like whatever install link we are going to share in the chat, through which the customers can request the install link. Yeah. So once the install link is provided, using that install link, we can access the app and install the app on the Dataverse, which is hosted on app source. So this is how the app would look like. And once we navigate to the install link, it would take us to app source, from where if we click on get it now, it just takes to the Power Platform environment, giving ability to choose which environment customers wants to install BPA on. Once the environment is selected, the install would begin. Install process generally take up to an hour. And once the install is completed, the normal pipeline process would kick in, what we have seen in the data architecture. And within 24 hours, your report should light up.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to do a quick demo of BPA. Let's just go right into the actual app. So when you come into BPA, I'll go ahead and start at the administration page. When you come in for the first time, you have an opportunity to learn more about BPA. This will take you to some Learn Docs that we have. You have an opportunity to validate your data, which means you'll be able to run some of the BPA reports, run your reports in FNO to validate the accuracy of the data. Then you can go ahead and select your dimensions on which you want to secure. Let's talk about security for a minute. So we have allowed you to set up roles, right? Just like you have in FNO. You can now set up roles in BPA as well. But in addition to that, we've given you the ability to select up to 5 dimensions. So 5 financial dimensions, by which you can also set up security on. So for example, if you use, say, business unit or cost center or region in your financial dimensions, you can now set security on those and extend your reporting out to further users. Now, with those dimensions that you want to secure, you can create dimension groups. So if you wanted to create a group, say by region, business center, business unit, and cost center, you could do that. And then assign that to a role, and then assign the role to a user. And at the bottom here, we have the link with Microsoft Fabric for what Severin just chatted about. So with the link to Microsoft Fabric, this is where you would come in and be able to establish your connection to Fabric and to be able to bring over your BPA table shortcuts over into Fabric so that you can begin to have that experience. And if you were to go ahead and click this Manage button, it would take you over into our Fabric page for to save time, I went ahead and brought that up. What that does is it brings you over into the Fabric environment. And over here, you'll see all the BPA tables. Now, please note, these tables, even though they do have friendly names, they're not completely user-friendly. They're very table-like. So you see it has a prefix of DMO, and then you see the product receipt number DIM. But you can tell your facts, which are packaged with facts, and like a number DIM, a dimension, are clearly articulated here. So it's also still a much cleaner and easier way by which you can write your reports. Just not assuming anything, a fact is your transaction table. So if you see the word fact in a table name, it means those are all your transactions. And a DIM is a dimension table, which means it's ways in which you can describe your facts. So things like accounting date, numbers, product, project, things like that. Those will all be dimensions. So I'm going to go back over to BPA again and go right into the reports. Now, I'll start off with the Microsoft reports. Microsoft has written a good set of reports that are fully editable. So these reports will have a type of Microsoft and a file type of Power BI. This is embedded Power BI. So you can come into any one of these reports, and I'll go ahead and do this trial balance report. And you can view this report, and it's ready to go. It will have your data in it, and you can view it and do and use it as is. But every single one of these Microsoft reports, you not only can duplicate the report, you can duplicate and edit it. So now for here, you see I have my trial balance. We've got some good preset filters across the top, and then you have your data. So this one is, it has the ability to view your data in the three currencies that we allow in F&O, which is your transaction currency, your accounting currency, and your reporting currency. You can filter by one or multiple legal entities. You can set your accounting date range. You can also view your numbers scale. Let me just go down a little bit and pull this across so we can see some numbers. You can also view your numbers scaled or original and then set your decimal places. Now, just say, for example, I wanted to make some edits. I don't like the view of this trial balance, and I want to customize it to what my company wants to do. So right now, I've got this filtered for Microsoft reports. I'm going to go back to all reports. I duplicated a trial balance earlier today, and when I duplicate a report, it'll just make a copy of the report and put a number 1 on the back. So once I come into this duplicated report, now you see I have this option to edit. So when I click on this edit button, I immediately am in Power BI embedded. So now I have full capabilities to edit this report. Now I want to bring your attention over to the data pane over here on the right. If you notice, the table names are a lot simpler and a lot more user-friendly. We have all our dimension tables prefixed with DIM. We have all our fact tables prefixed with fact. Right here up on top, we have a folder with all your amounts measures, all the calculations already preset for you. In addition for that, we have parameters by which you use to create your slicers. And we have all of this will be provided for in the Learn Docs. We'll be publishing those here in the next few weeks. And in addition to that, if you don't want to write a report from scratch, you can come into any existing report, and once you're in edit mode, of course, just like in any Power BI report, you can go ahead and change what's on the screen. You can bring in additional views. Let's say I wanted to, this doesn't like me right now, but let's try this, okay. Maybe not work, doesn't quite like, but you can go ahead and bring in additional pie charts or visuals and expand the report as much as you want. One question we get asked a lot is, can I drill down in my reports? I'm going to go ahead and save this report. You say, can I drill on a number? We've enabled drill through capabilities on just the trial balance for now, but we'll go ahead and add it into other ones. But if I go ahead and click on any number and I go drill through, it's taking me to another report that I have that has my transaction details. So it can tell me exactly what this is. Now, this report is also editable. So I can edit this report and I can bring in additional fields if I don't see fields here that help me explain what this is. Now, going back to the reports one more time, you'll see that file type Power BI is the most common, but you do also have the ability to extend your data model into Excel. So I went ahead and pulled up an Excel worksheet. And so in Excel, when I click on that, what it does is it brings me to a trial balance that's already been generated. Now, when I make any changes to this and I save this, it will save back into BPA. So I can always come back into this report again. Over here on the right, if you look at my pivot table fields, it's the exact same data model that you were looking at earlier. So I have all my facts, all my dimensions, all my parameters, and I can go ahead and write my report in Excel with full Excel capabilities, just like I would if I was to copy and paste my data in here. Let me go back to BPA real quick. We've created some pretty standard reports that we think would, number one, give you as a user the numbers that you need to get started. But then the other thing is also we've given you reports that are a good starting place if you were to go ahead and extend this reports out to what you want to write for your own company. So I'll go back to Microsoft reports again. You can see we have a balance sheet, budget versus actual report. You have your dimension details and transaction details. We have aging reports for sales and vendor aging, and as well as a vendor invoice transaction and payments and transaction details. We are going to be adding a deferred revenue waterfall report here as well once we roll out that model. So those are going to be coming out incrementally. I will go back to our PowerPoint presentation now and open it up for questions.
Gee, thank you very much. I see there's a new question incoming. A lot of questions has been asked already. We shared good answers to this, but let's take a look to some important ones. There's a question by Frederick. Will BPA replace management reporter or financial reporting?
Good question on this one. There are no immediate plans to decrement management reporter or financial reporting because it currently serves a very important purpose for our customers. One thing to keep in mind is financial reporting is near real time, right? So you put your transactions into F&O, you see your transactions in FR almost instantly, right? BPA currently has a 24-hour lag time between when you enter your transactions and when you see them in BPA. So it's not something that I would say is a direct replacement right now. But BPA does not allow you to do a lot of the other things that you cannot do in FR.
Thanks, Jeannie. There's another question which is about the UI, if it's allowing us for multi-language support. Can you comment on that?
Sure. Thank you. So BPA currently is only available in English, US. There are further plans post-GA to extend it to other languages. So not currently, but in the future, yes, it's in the roadmap. So I see a question. There's a question here about, is it possible to change the semantic model behind this report? When we talk about the semantic model, it's the model that you saw in Power BI and Excel earlier is what we refer to as a semantic model. So I'll go ahead and answer it from that perspective. The answer is yes. If you were to extend using scenario 1, what Stebrin showed earlier, scenario 1, the first option where you just extend the tables over as Fabric shortcuts into Fabric, you can create your own semantic layer, right? If you are referring to the actual data model as opposed to like creating different facts and dimensions or changing how a fact and a dimension looks, that the answer to that would be no. That would, because it's a managed solution, the data model is managed by Microsoft, it's not something that you could change. So I hope I've answered this question correctly. If not, please do ask a follow-up question.
Thanks, Jeannie. And thanks for picking up a question. I was talking on mute for a second. Can you comment on the timeline for BPA? There's a question about when BPA will be GA, generally available.
Okay. BPA currently is in public preview for and available for participants. We are currently in limited regions, but we will be extending those regions as well. Now, we are going to be going into a public preview GA. So that means that what we're going to do is we're going to allow a select number of customers in public preview to go into production with us during GA process. And the reason for this is because we're still working on quality and reliability, and we want to work through this. And with that, what we'll do is we'll continue to open up that public preview production, GA, to more and more customers. So we don't currently have a set GA date yet, but that's the journey we're going to be going through. One thing I would encourage you is that if you're not currently part of our customer advisory board, is if you could join our customer advisory board. It is the best way to stay up to date on what's happening with BPA. It's also a great place to ask questions and connect with the product managers on BPA, and to have your voice heard to make sure that we're capturing your needs in the development of BPA. And we can make that link available at the end, right, Sebrin?
Yeah, sure. We can push that link in chat as an announcement. I will work on that in a second. Before that, I will give you the next question, Jeannie, and that's about the currencies. So, are there plans to include other currencies like you do in the financial reporter?
Yeah, good question. So currently, you have the currencies by which you have entered into F&O. One thing that we do have in the roadmap is to work on, say, like a constant currency. So say you want to look at all your legal entities together across multiple currencies, but you want to select a single currency. That is in the roadmap. It is not something that's available right now. We do have a currency table that we haven't quite published yet. The currency table mirrors what you have established in F&O. Technically, once we have made that available, especially in Fabric, you're able to calculate your own currencies, right? By selecting your spot rate and your daily rate. But so short answer is not yet, but it is in the roadmap. Long answer is that it's something that you can currently do once the table is made available yourself as well.
There's another question for the capacity. So I'm still not clear who's paying for the Power BI embedded capacity.
Yeah, I can take this one. So at GA, right, we want basically BPA is a managed offering. So we would provide the default data limits, right, as we said, right, which is basically providing reporting up to 3 years of historical data plus the current financial year, right? This would be the part of the managed offering, what BPA would have. And then with the licensing, right, post GA, we would have the additional capacities for covering the scenarios on the extended data historical reportings.
There's a question from Tyler about the guidance on when to position BPA versus the embedded Power BI and F&O.
Okay, that's a great question. So embedded Power BI and F&O has its limitations because it's currently written off Entity Store. Now, the data model used in Entity Store is different from the data model we're using in BPA. BPA uses a dimensional data model. And like I mentioned earlier, BPA has taken all your business processes and we have modeled it down to the lowest grain, right? So what I would say is that BPA will eventually be enhancing all of the embedded Power BIs that you see in F&O. That's the ultimate goal, right? We're not quite there yet, but that's the goal is to eventually get there when we can get higher frequency of refreshes as well.
Another question, can you summarize the difference on a high level between BPA and BPP, Business Performance Planning?
Oh, sure. So BPA and BPP do have some overlap. Now, Business Performance Planning is focused mainly on planning, so forecasting and planning. BPP gives you the ability to pull your numbers to make changes in BPP itself, right? That will feed back into F&O. So you have more flexibility around planning. Now, BPP is covered under the Finance Premium license, right? So you don't get it like BPA in just your regular finance license. So there are differences there. Is there a lot of, there is some overlap in the sense that, and currently BPP is only looking at your general ledger tables, whereas BPA will look at not only your general ledger tables, but it will look at all your sub-ledger tables as well. So there are some distinct differences and a lot of similarities, but currently, for now, they're still two very separate products.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Let me just add a little bit more to that one, Severin.
Sure.
I would say we look at BPP as being a forecasting and planning tool, and we look at BPA as being your analytics and modeling tool, right? So it's a tool that you can use for your AI projects. It's a tool that you can use for your analytics and insights and reporting, because it has the level and the grain of data that you will need to do that successfully.
The question I see here in front of me is about the possibility to drill down back to the transactions we have in F&O. So I'm assuming that's referring to the capability we have in financial reporting, that we can drill down and go back to the transactions in the ledger transactions form. Can you comment on this?
Sure. Yeah. So currently in F&O, when you drill onto a transaction, it takes you onto a page that says about your transactions or origin of transactions, right? And there you're able to see things like voucher number, journal entry number, invoice number, amount, etc. You can do the same thing in BPA because the data is available. So for example, earlier I showed how in the general ledger, I wanted to drill down on a single general ledger number on the trial balance and be able to see all the transactions that made up that number. And I was able to do that. What it would entail, now the capabilities there, what it would entail is making sure we have all the appropriate reports built on the back end. So that's how Power BI works. If the data is available, all you'd have to make sure is all the reports that are necessary for you to drill into are available. So that is something we're still working on. We've written the front report, like the trial balance and the balance sheet. What we're starting to do right now is figure out what transaction level reports we need to write on the back end to make sure that you can do that drill down that you need. So the answer to that is yes, you can do the same thing. Now, sorry, second part of your question, I just saw this, Christian, is can you see or open the attachments? And the answer to that one is no. We don't. So for example, if you've used, say, invoice capture and you have a picture of the invoice in F&O, you cannot drill through to that. That one is not possible because that invoice capture attachment is not brought over into the BPA. It's not brought over into BPA, right? So that one you cannot. But you can see all the transaction lines on that invoice. I see another question from Nicholas. Can I go ahead and answer that one, Severin? Will it be possible to filter transactions from the age balance? And the answer to that is yes. So if I'm looking at an aging report, let me just go into this real quick because I think it's always easier if we can show it. If I go into an aging report, if you can see my screen, you can absolutely filter transactions on an age balance. You can filter. So the way we have the report written right now, again, fully customizable by you, is we have a summary aging on top that has a summary. It has a summary by vendor, right? So you see the total aging just like you would in any aging report. If I was to say click on tailspin parts and I wanted to see what made up this 87.1, I could click on it and then I would see my invoice details down below. If I wanted to create additional filters, I absolutely could because this is Power BI. So I could customize this reports and add in any additional filters that I would need. So a semantic model behind the CAN report shown in the model-driven app cannot be changed. So question again. So the semantic model, let me go back to my visual here. Go into a report that is editable. So when I say analytical tables, this is the tables that come over in Fabric, right? So it is out of these tables right here that we bring these tables into a Power BI data set. In that Power BI data set, we establish our joins. Now, the Power BI data set is our semantic model, right? So these tables come into a Power BI data set, and then we create new, we rename them so they're a little friendlier, right? So they're right here. This right here is what we call the semantic model. This is how we look at the semantic model. Can you change this semantic model? If you're using the Microsoft dataset, no, you can't. But if you can if you extend it eventually, right? In scenario 2, if you extend it, we give you the dataset, you can change it there. Like if you wanted to change names or you wanted to change measures, you could. You could only do that in the Fabric environment. You cannot do it here in BPA, in the embedded app. So let me be clear on my answer again. So if you wanted to change this model right here, this semantic model, when it's available in Fabric, which is our iteration 2, you will be able to change it here. Here you can come in, you can select the semantic layer, you can make changes to that model. Or you can create your own, right? But if you're in the model-driven app, you cannot. Here you can't make changes to them. And then another question by Alexander. For the license, is finance required to view generated reports in BPA? I can see finance license being required to change or add reports. Okay. So currently in BPA, it's not tied to a finance license. Now, I cannot guarantee that it's always going to be like this, right? So when you establish these reports in BPA, you're setting up your users based on your Enter ID, your Azure Active Directory. So it's not exactly tied to a finance license because this data has been brought out of finance, right? So, but I cannot say that this is how it's always going to be. So for now, I'll say yes, it's possible to share this out with non-finance users. Are there any plans to support that the user can open attachments? For example, drill through the transactions and open the attachments. Christian, I believe this is something that we have talked about putting into the roadmap. It's not in the roadmap right now, but it's something that if we do have an ideas portal as well, if it's something you want to submit in our ideas portal, we can make that link available to you, and we can definitely prioritize it.
There are 2 new questions I see. The first one is about the AI side to this solution. Maybe that's the good possibility to pitch a bit the Copilot.
Yeah.
Work we're doing on BPA.
Yeah, this is, super exciting and great question. So Risham has answered this. AI integration capabilities are included. The one thing that we'll be rolling out with GA is going to be Q&A over Docs. So that means you'll be able to ask questions to Copilot about the data model, about BPA, and learn BPA as you're in the app instead of having to go to the docs and continuously read it. And then we will have a few other Copilot scenarios as well. Please do join our cabs. We'll be sharing them there as we progress. And if you have any ideas of how you'd like to see Copilot used for BPA, we'd love to hear those as well. Do we have every question answered then?
We have time for one more question about the documentation of the semantic model table relationships.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let me see if I have this. As part of the BPA reports, we're going to be adding these 3 new pages. The first one is the bus matrix. So this one shows you all the facts that we've written and all the dimensions by which they conform. So say, for example, if I'm saying I want to write a purchase invoice report and I want to know what dimensions I can use. These are all the dimensions that are available for me to use. So this is one thing I have. I can also do it by dimensions. Say I want to see what reports I can run by accounting date. And now I have all of these dimensions together. So I can see it that way. The second page we're going to be releasing is a table mappings page. And this one, most of our customers get pretty excited about. This one shows you the BPA analytical tables and column names, right? And the semantic table names and column names maps to actual F&O table and column names. So this one, I believe, is pretty useful. And the third tab that we're going to be releasing is the measures glossary. So as you saw earlier, we have lots of measures that we've written in our semantic model. We've summarized those measures here so you know how we wrote them. And if you have any questions on them, this would be a good place to know if you can reuse them for what you need to reuse them for.
Thank you very much. With that, we are at the end of the hour. Thank you for attending the session. Thanks to the presenters and have a nice day. Thank you very much.